the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hope that you're having a great Wednesday. Yes, it is Wednesday here on the Team 980. Anthony Haney alongside for one more day before he's out on a trip.
Yes, today is my Friday. I will be gone for the next 2 days. Or the next 3 days, because Monday we're off too.
That's true. Yeah, Monday we're off. Not only is it MLK Day, so we'd be off for the holiday, of course, honoring Martin Luther King, but we also have Wizards basketball during that time slot. The Wizards playing their traditional afternoon game, so there's no room for our show anyway. So we'll be back on Tuesday, and maybe we'll have someone in the front office for the Washington Commanders. I tend to think
Greg.
that could be the case. I think it could happen by the end of the week, bro.
Speaking into existence then, Craig.
I think it could happen by the end of the week.
There it is. What's going to happen then?
So that's something we'll obviously be monitoring here on the show. But we're also taking a look at the head coaching carousel, and as it turns, asking a question. Is Washington still the top job on the market? Because the market suddenly, Anthony, looks very different than we thought it was going to look like. Atlanta, available. Chicago, not. And then today, bombshell out of nowhere, an hour and a half ago or so, Seattle moving on from Pete Carroll. He'll move into an advisor role. Carroll is in his 70s, which sometimes people forget because he's so energetic and he's out there running around. And, it wasn't that long ago that he took his shirt off in DK Metcalf's draft interview. That's a real thing that happened. DK showed up shirtless, so Pete was like, hey, I'll match your energy. But Pete's, he's in his 70s, and the Seahawks, I think, were at a point, clearly as an organization, where they were ready to go in a different direction. I don't know if that's the smartest thing they've ever done, but sometimes that kind of stuff happens. And they've also got a weird ownership situation because we know that Paul Allen's trust is currently like watching over that team. Jody Allen, I believe his widowed wife is the one who is actually in charge, but I think that they'll sell. Like, they're the next team that will sell, which is why a lot of people think Bezos pulled out here, is because he'll just buy the Seahawks, and it'll probably cost him less than what it was going to cost him here. And that's really his hometown team, even though he has strong DC ties, Washington Post, Amazon opening up here, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to do this tomorrow and take command. I'm going to do this with Logan on like a full rubric. We're going to do the math version of this, Anthony, where we're going to rate every situation 1 through 5 in like 5 different categories. But just kind of more broadly, if I say these names, let's hit the highlights, right? Washington, 3 top 40 picks, somewhere between $75 and $90 million, let's call it, in cap space. You write down on the rundown 86. Where did you get that number from?
I checked that from
it was Spotrac, maybe?
Yeah, I think it was on Spotrac.
Okay, Over the Cap, I think, has it at 78.
Oh, okay.
But the thing is, some of those sites are anticipating certain cuts or whatever. So, it's possible the Commanders, if they really get aggressive, could have $100 million in cap space. So they've got more cap space than anybody. They've got more resources than anybody else. Titans, $77 million in cap space. They have the number 7 pick. You're probably looking at Derrick Henry leaving, a couple big names on defense still around, young quarterback in Levis. Washington, blank slate at quarterback. Atlanta, terrible division. They are definitively, it seems, a quarterback away. They have the number 8 pick in a draft where there are some quarterbacks, and they have $38 million in cap space. I would say the problems there are your roster's built. Well, actually, I don't even know, because your roster's kind of built a very specific way. Your offensive line is built in a very, very specific way. Your offensive line is built to run outside zone and a lot of zone read and things like that. Can they hold up in pass protection? We'll see, but they got a bunch of really good players. Then you got the Panthers. You have a terrible owner. You have a young team. They have about 2.5 good players. Derek Brown's awesome. Brian Burns is a free agent. Is Brown a free agent?
Nah, Brown isn't. I know Burns is set to be.
Yeah, Burns is set to be a free agent. You do have your young quarterback in Bryce Young, which could be a positive or a negative, thinking on what you thought of him. I would certainly look at Young as almost like, what did I think of him coming out? Maybe I take in some consideration this year what he did, but the year was so tumultuous. Not going to read too much into it. Raiders, they have $55 million in cap space, number 13 pick. They have a huge question at quarterback. Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams, 2 stars with contracts that you can move / you got to figure out. And by the way, the team really wants the Antonio Pierce. So if you don't come in and bring the right energy, they're going to be pissed. Chargers, 2 first-rounders, but they are in salary cap hell, and their owner's not very good. And but you do have the young quarterback. So you've got Justin Herbert. And then Seattle, you're in kind of a weird spot at quarterback. You have Geno, but he's older and he's not that good, but he's not bad. So you're not dead at quarterback. You've got great receivers. You have really good defensive backfield and a bunch of other studs on defense. Your O-line's been a kind of a mess for a long time, and you're having to be the guy who follows the guy. You're following a Super Bowl champion. They have a middle of the first round pick. And then I don't know their cap situation, but they also have no second round pick. So Seattle to me is like an interesting job. And by the way, your ownership situation is in extreme flux because the team's likely to be sold within the next couple of years. So I don't think that's a phenomenal situation, but it's also not a bad one. Also, Seattle has told their other coaches, you're free to look for other jobs. But if you want to, you can just say like, hey, Shane Waldron, we're going to keep you. And Waldron might get a look at head coach there. Obviously, their number one candidate seems to be Dan Quinn, who was the DC when they won the Super Bowl with Pete all the way back in 2013, I think it was, 2014, whatever it was, that they won that Super Bowl with the Legion of Boom. So those are the openings. Which ones would you put above Washington? 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. We'll rank them next here on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Almost at 1,000 subscribers, so if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Go ahead, do that on YouTube at the Team 980. We're taking your calls on the Ace Law listener line at 301-230-0980. If you're in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888. Ace Law. The question we are asking you on the phones is the Commander's job the best one on the market? The market looks very different than we thought it would. You got the Chargers, that was expected, but you got teams like the Falcons and the Seahawks all of a sudden that are not expected or were not expected. So how does that change the market? And then, I mean, there's also the reality that there's some coaches, with, for instance, Tennessee on the market. I don't think anyone looks at Tennessee and is like, that's a better job than Washington. But Mike Vrabel affects the market. So that certainly is something to consider as well. All right, let's go to the phones. Again, 301-230-0980. Our guy Lap has a thought. Lap, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's up, Craig? Hey, man, I think I missed you last week, so my bad about that. Hey, I think Washington will be number one, man. I mean, this is a transient area. We got a lot of people coming in and out of here, moving to this area. It'll be a prime destination. I know that the Chargers coaching vacancy would definitely be intriguing. I wouldn't want to be in Atlanta, Carolina, Arizona, or Tennessee, for real, to be honest. Maybe I'm a little biased, but I think this would be a good spot. And then let me ask you this, Craig. Do you think if the opportunity presented itself, would you go after Justin Fields if we had an opportunity?
Nope.
Or what about Kyler Murray, or no?
No, not interested in either. Not that I don't think either isn't a good player. Not that either isn't intriguing in certain spots. I think it's a bad fit here. You've got, in Kyler's case, someone who's already been paid a lot of money that you would then have to take on that contract, and you would have to pay him bukus of money over the next couple of years while you're trying to build the roster, which is not ideal. You want the quarterback to get paid when you're ready to compete right now, and Fields is about to have to paid a bunch of money. So I think you're better, like, if you're looking at two guys that haven't proven that they're, like, definitely the man, like definitely a franchise quarterback where there's still questions, or you could draft someone where you got 5 years of a cheap contract, relatively speaking, to find out. I'd rather draft someone.
So would you go that route, Craig, to go draft somebody? Because then it's saying to the fans and everybody, that we're starting over, that we're building. You know what I'm saying?
But
and
like Houston built it
instantly.
Well,
I'm saying what's going to happen with guys like Payne and Allen and Terry? You know what I'm saying? Like,
they are a part of the team. They play. Like, it doesn't have to be more complicated than it is. Like, thanks for the call, Lap. But like, I think when you look at the teams that have built it, this would have been my question had I gotten a microphone the other day to ask Josh Harris. Or it was one of the questions I guess I was considering. He answered a similar one, actually. So let me quickly, as I talk here, pull up Harris on this the other day. But basically, when you see teams like Philadelphia, right, who was good, had a core, got screwed up at quarterback with Wentz, and then rebuilt it around a young Jalen Hurts. It is worth remembering, this is Jalen Hurts' third year as a starter. Year 2, he wins MVP. They go to the Super Bowl. Like, now Jalen had obviously been around long enough that he's already got the contract extension now at this point. But like, as a starter, this is his. I'm not off on that, right? This is his third year as a starter.
Yeah, this is his third year. First year he was like 7-9, I want to say it was, and then last year, and now this year.
Yeah. So you can rebuild it pretty fast. They were there in year 2. C.J. Stroud, I mean, the Texans were supposed to be awful this year, and they're in the playoffs. The Colts barely missed the playoffs, and they've been, up and down. They're the number 5 pick last year, and that guy missed most of the season. So I think it's like worth pointing out that drafting a young quarterback and like rebuilding doesn't have to be this like essentially what Ron Rivera said, 3 to 5 year project. So Terry and John, like, they're going to show up and they're going to try to win games next year. And I don't think, depending on who they coach, draft, and sign in free agency, that they can't win a bunch of them. It's going to depend on how good the quarterback is, for sure. But this roster, I will maintain until I'm sitting in this chair a year from now after another 4-win season. I will maintain that this roster is not as devoid of talent as the coaching staff here made it seem. As for Harris and his timeline for a rebuild, here was the Commanders' managing partner on Monday.
Yeah, listen, this was not a fun season for the ownership group. I mean, we're right there with the fans in terms of sweating every loss. And so, I mean, obviously, if we could write the script, it would be a quick turnaround. But on the other hand, you have to make long-term decisions and do things in a very, one person at a time, one athlete at a time. And so sometimes they take longer, right? So I think what my view is that we want it to be as quick as we can, but the ultimate goal, right, is to be an elite team that's competing for championships. And so I find that when you do things quickly, sometimes you set yourself back. And so my orientation is to make the right decisions and let the time frame take its own course. I mean, obviously, I want a winning franchise quickly, but on the other hand, for me, it's about making the right decisions.
Here's the thing, and Josh Harris would admit this if he was not answering questions 1 minute at a time at a press conference. Sometimes those two things can happen together. And again, I will use the Texans as an example. They didn't do, I mean, I guess they did something a little crazy, right? They went up and not only drafted one guy in the top 3, they drafted 2. They were willing to give up a future 1 to do it when it looked like they were going to be terrible. Arizona thought, like, we know we're going to suck this year. So were they. We might pick 1, 2 in the draft next year. Turns out the Bears actually made the trade that gets them the number 1 pick in the draft by trading number 1 last year. But the Texans knew, like, they liked Stroud. That was their guy. We can't pass up the quarterback. But they also knew Will Anderson was their DeMeco Ryans. He was DeMeco Ryans' version of himself, a leader that is a culture setter for your organization. And by the way, he's also a very good football player. And so they quickly grabbed those 2 guys. They were super smart with some later picks. A guy like Tank Dell was incredible for them as a rookie. They make a couple of smart signings, and they're in the playoffs, hosting a playoff game. They didn't do anything. They didn't try to shortcut it. They didn't do anything. In fact, going into the season, most people, myself included, thought they'd be terrible. Hey, it's just not a good roster. It's fine. I like what they're starting to build. I like some of the types of guys they're bringing in, but they're not going to get there quickly. Whoops, wrong on that one. And who knows? Maybe a year from now they take a step back. Sometimes that happens. We've seen coaches here win a division ahead of schedule and then take steps back, and by year 5 they're gone. But maybe not. Maybe this is being built in a more sustainable way, and it certainly feels that way because if they took a gigantic step back, it'd be because C.J. Stroud regressed, and unless he's about to pull, I hate to say it, but like an RG3 type of situation, that's unlikely, and style of play-wise, that seems really unlikely. Long story short, if Washington is smart with this number 2 pick, and smart could mean any number of things. It could be like Houston, nailing a quarterback. It could be like Houston, turning it into multiple picks. Do they trade back? And, I saw like some crazy scenario today where it's like, does Atlanta or does Washington trade Fields or Chicago trade Fields to Washington, who then trades him to Atlanta? And it's this 3-team deal where Washington winds up with 2 top 10 picks, trading back a little bit. But they get 2 top 10 picks in a future second and this year's second and all this stuff. I was like, I don't know, maybe. Seems highly unlikely to me. But like something like that, where you trade back and you get a ton of assets. Like, there are ways to do this. They have good options. And you're in a quarterback-rich draft, which is always a great place to have options. So this is why I think Washington – I also saw another chart today, by the way, as we get back to kind of the original point here in terms of is Washington the top job on the market. I saw a chart today that graded out draft capital, free agent capital, et cetera, and Washington, by this metric, had the most in terms of resources. So this is definitely going to be an appealing place. And then it comes down to you go from the player personnel side to the system. What is being run here, and how does it fit with the players? Do you operate an ecosystem where you get the most out of players and that you protect your weaknesses and accentuate your strengths? This is where schematics matter. And that's going to be a huge question that the head coach has to answer. It's something they failed at miserably the entire last 4 years. It's something that, frankly, kept some under-talented teams, I think, afloat during the Gruden era because Jay could win with the pen sometimes, but they screwed up a bunch of other stuff because, Bruce Allen was running the team. And lo and behold, they were pretty mediocre. So that's where we are as of 4/26 on Wednesday, January 10th. And who knows, by this time on Friday, maybe we'll have a front office person who we understand a little bit more to guide this vision. To talk about the lead candidate for that, Bonte Hill will join us coming up at 5 o'clock, our buddy from 95.7 The Game out in San Francisco. He's also going to have to answer for telling us that Jordan Poole will be good. So we'll get to that coming up at 5 o'clock. But we didn't talk to Michael Phillips yet this week. So let's talk to Michael Phillips. We'll do that next here on The Hoffman Show. on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And of course, on that free Odyssey app, you can also listen to our sister station down in Richmond, 910 The Fan, 10 a.m. to noon every day. You find Michael Phillips, who has found himself still at the radio station. There he is. If you're watching on YouTube, radio microphone in front of him and everything. Michael, thank you for coming on the show on Not a Monday.
It's a big day at Odyssey Richmond. We're having our strategy meeting for the year. My strategy is to continue to wing it. Apparently, some people do prefer a more cohesive strategy. So we'll see if we can't come up with something that works for everybody.
We use a lot of Google Documents. We have like a rundown document. We have a Google Sheet that's more topical and allows us to plan both vertically and horizontally. Now we're very inside baseball or inside radio, but that's fine. I do find that doing a daily show, that's something I learned very quickly. The vertical within the day and horizontal out through the weeks, planning, good strategy.
Yeah, because the days add up on you. They sneak up on you. We also have something called Odyssey Points. I don't know if you have Odyssey Points.
I think I've gotten one or two. I don't know what they're good for, but
you can redeem them for like coasters and backpacks and stuff. So yeah, I don't know if that's I don't know if that's common in your world, but we dap each other up with the Odyssey Points here.
Nice. That's good strategy. Collect the Odyssey points. DA used to have a bit on his show when he was on CBS about Odyssey coins. I don't know what that was all about. Anyway, speaking of days sneaking up on you, it's already January 10th.
Yes,
and that's crazy. We're gonna be in the middle of January soon, and all of a sudden next week at some point, I'm thinking we might have a front office executive. 5 interviews in the first 2 days, basically, of the off season. I guess Monday doesn't count. That's day 0, but day 1, day 2 of the off season. They got 5 interviews, including Adam Peters in San Francisco. I know when we talked, what was it, about 9 days ago, whatever that was, the Tuesday after the season, we both thought Peters would stay in San Francisco. As you're following this, as a beat reporter as well, of course, for the Washington Times, like, what are you hearing about the realistic possibility that they could actually land Adam Peters?
Yeah, dude's got ties to Bob Myers. He flew from San Francisco to Miami on I guess it was Tuesday night to meet with Josh Harris. All signs positive here, right? He's I love that Josh Harris too isn't just like, oh, can we get him? Let's get him, but is going to complete the process, is going to talk to everybody else, is going to do all these other interviews. That's valuable for him as a guy new to the NFL to hear visions, to hear ideas, to kick the tires on everybody else as well. So I think that's very important that he uses as a fact-finding process as well as a GM finding process. But I think if Adam Peters is interested, you have to install him as the favorite here. What they've built in San Francisco speaks for itself. His track record speaks for itself. Obviously, some other really good candidates that they're interviewing as well. But I think Adam Peters jumps to the top of that pile for sure.
And my question then becomes, like, is he the only one they hire out of this pile? Because, Peters, you're going to have to obviously at least make the GM, which is what they want to do anyway. But he could probably become the GM in San Francisco. Like, he might involve a fancier title now that John Lynch has been promoted and they've created some space there. Like, what kind of structure do you think we could be looking at, and how high could they put Peters on that totem pole?
Yeah, vice president, executive vice president, football operations, things of that nature. I do think, right, so set aside Harbaugh, he's his own category. Basically, any other coach we're talking about here is going to answer to this guy. So you can create a title like that, have him over everything, get another, quote, general manager into the building, get 2 people. Now, I'm always weary of too many cooks in the kitchen, particularly given the sensitivities of this, what you walk into here. You got all the money to spend. You got a number 2 draft pick. You got a lot of options. That can create a lot of issues as well, right? It's not your scouting team making that pick. It's information you're coming in with, and you're trying to figure out these relationships and trying to figure out how you build the future of the team and make really important, like, 5 and 10-year decisions. It's a tricky offseason. It's going to be tricky for Josh Harris to navigate. I do love, it seems like the general manager search is going to wrap up quickly, which I love, because these head coaching candidates, the ones coaching this week, they're eligible for virtual interviews next week, gets that person in the room, in the call when that happens, which I love.
Michael Phillips, of course, the Washington Times and 910 The Fan in Richmond. What
like when you say quickly, like, do you have a sense of just how quickly?
I think it could be by the end of the week for sure. And
Wow.
now some of this will depend on the team they're hiring from if they want to let that, because the rule is, of course, they can hang on to that person through the end of their postseason run if they want to. That does apply across the board in the NFL. That they are allowed to say you can go in February. But as we've seen, of course, you make a behind the scenes hire, that person can be on the phone with you. It was, the Jonathan Gannon thing where that got a little touchy there, obviously, where he was spending a Super Bowl week lining up his staff, but it's certainly not unheard of.
So what are there any differences rule wise for front office versus head coach? Because the coaching stuff is like very clear. Like, hey, you're with your 2023 team until your 2023 season is over. But like an assistant GM, I don't know how much they're actually doing to prepare for a playoff game. So for Adam Peters or for Alec Hallaby, if they go that direction in Philadelphia or whoever, obviously like an Ian Cunningham, he's available. The Bears are done. But if it is Peters, Hallaby, et cetera, like they can come right away, can't they?
I think so. I think if it's an assistant to full GM, that's the distinction, right? You can't poach a GM to GM without the permission of the team. I think it's different when they're a rung lower, right? Same thing. You can go hire a wide receivers coach to be your play caller and offensive coordinator. You can't hire offensive coordinator to offensive coordinator without checking in and going through all the steps. So I think that's why you're seeing the only one on the list that wasn't an assistant general manager by title was in Dallas. And that's obviously its own very wacky setup with Jerry Jones, of course. But I think the majority of these talks are with assistant general managers. That's where you want to find the next generation of leaders from.
Have we heard if Will McClay, who you're talking about in Dallas, has actually accepted the interview yet? I know there was a request put out.
I have not, and I also think he may be subject to kind of the rules we're talking about here, where Dallas could dictate the terms of that and potentially refuse it until that virtual window opens next week, which would be tough, obviously. I don't know why they would do that other than just competitive keeping your guy reasons, but I have not heard resolution on that now.
Well, I would say they also don't want to lose Will McClay in Dallas. I remember when I was working in Dallas a decade ago, like Will McClay's name came up every year because everyone's like, this guy's the best kept secret in football. And the thing is about secrets in football is there are none. Like people know that Will McClay runs that scouting department. And while Jerry Jones is the GM, and Jerry's certainly got thoughts, like Will McClay's in charge. And so people know that, and they've been able to keep him because I think they pay him a lot of money. It's like, hey, Jerry will deal with the media stuff. He might occasionally cause you a headache in doing so, but we'll compensate you for it. And thus Will McClay has stayed in Dallas the entire time.
There's also a nice cachet to working for the Cowboys, right? Telling your friends that, and take them around the star, and if you get a ring in Dallas, like that counts double in the eyes of everybody else. It seems like, right? If you're quarterback for the Cowboys, you get to be on network TV. Those are the rules. I don't make them. It's the Cowboys world, man.
Yeah, we're all just living in it, trying to beat him. And as Josh Harris loved to remind everybody at the initial press conference when he bought the team, there was a time that was Washington. And obviously, like we saw Joe Theismann be the one of the analysts on Sunday Night Football forever. If they can turn this thing around, you certainly have to think that life would be good for future Washington Commanders or whatever they call them, as you asked Josh Harris, and he distinctly did not say no to a name change the other day.
I heard a lot of words. I didn't hear no.
We got other stuff we're working on right now, but we might be onto something there. Michael Phillips, 910 The Fan. Yeah, down in Richmond, to be continued, the theme of the week. All right, where are we at on head coaches? There's this, I don't know, like the headline didn't match the story, in my opinion, in ESPN.com today. Dan Graziano and Jeremy Fowler like doing their notebook every day. And the headline was like Washington leaning defensive coach. And the paragraph really just said there's more defensive coaches in the marketplace than there are offensive coaches. What are you hearing in terms of any direction on the head coaching side of things?
Yeah, and you got to give credit to Josh Harrison team. They've been very good about keeping this process under wraps. Obviously, we all learned about Bob Myers at the same time.
I did find it really funny, though. I was listening to Zach Lowe's podcast on Tuesday, and he's like, I've heard this rumor for weeks. I'm like, of course you have. You don't work in the NFL. And you also are a colleague of Bob Myers on ESPN. So that's cheating.
Your coworkers. Yes. Yeah. Of course. That doesn't count at all. Yeah, no.
But anyway, I just was like, oh, sure. You know about it, Zach Lowe. What about the rest of us out here in the real world? Anyway, continue. Yes, they kept that under wraps very well.
Yeah, there by my count, 7 requests out, 5 of them are defensive coaches. I think I may have the exact numbers and ratio off. You don't hire 7 people; you hire 1 person, and so in the end, you either hire an offensive guy or a defensive guy. It doesn't matter how many of each side you interviewed. I do think it's interesting, right? Like this whole wave of consensus for so long has been got to get an offensive guy, work with your quarterback, have that stability. I totally get that. I think there are good options out there in terms of either veteran offensive coordinators or younger guys, your Kellen Moores of the world, who could get a play calling opportunity, so to speak, in Washington, where it's not maybe necessarily like mission critical. I think that, I hate saying culture, Craig. I just hate talking about culture. We've done it too much and it means nothing and it's an empty word. I think for Josh Harris, you look at some of these defensive coaches that are being interviewed, they are guys who are renowned for setting a tone on their teams and setting an atmosphere on their teams. And I think Raheem Morris is one of those guys. Everybody you talk to loves playing for Raheem Morris, right? So yes, he's a defensive guy instead of an offensive guy. Yes, culture is an empty word and it's 2024 and we say it and it doesn't mean anything. But I think it's at least marginally important to Josh Harris that whoever he gets is not a genius, but a leader.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think he would like to get both. And from what I've heard, like Ben Johnson kind of fits that mold.
Yeah.
And there's some other guys that are, Mike McDonald on the defensive side seems to fit that mold as well. I don't know. I like the culture thing because I think that's been part of the problem here.
Yeah.
And, when it's not present, or like the culture's bad and you're around it, it feels very stupid because everyone talks about it and, they almost don't even realize how bad it is. But then when you see it at work, when it's good, you're like, oh, I see how this works. And I do like, that's something that I think is going to be pretty fascinating for the new regime on the personnel side. Nevertheless, the head coach side, like there's going to have to be cohesion in talking about this. But like when you hear first Jahan Dotson's comments right at the end of the regular season about how some of the veterans or some of the leaders like maybe are accepting losing. And then you hear like Logan Thomas and Charles Leno be like, yeah, we didn't really like Bieniemy that much. And we know that Bieniemy was like really pushing. If there's not that buy-in from your key veterans, like there could be some tough decisions to make. Like, John Allen, when he was on with the Junkies earlier this week, he's like, he was excited about what Josh Harris said. I think John would like to be here when push comes to shove, but like, do you want to be here or do you want to be here if things are going your way? And like, those are the kinds of things that I think, February is kind of going to be spent talking about of which of these veterans, which of these leaders actually fits the new culture versus the need for a blank slate on the leadership side as well.
And then the need to turn over a lot of this roster. You're looking at a big chunk of turnover coming that maybe isn't necessarily the norm or even coaching change norm, right? Ron Rivera came in, he turned over the whole roster, brought in all his Carolina guys for this reason. It just didn't pan out at all, right? And now you got to do the whole thing again, and you got to go through this whole process again. I do think John Allen is maybe headed for the trade block just because the contract's so good. He's arguably underpaid for the next 2 years. This is probably the year where he would come in asking for an extension. I think that gives you an opportunity here to potentially deal him, potentially get value for him on the market. But yeah, you mentioned it, right? So Eric Bieniemy is such a polarizing figure this year, and Eric Bieniemy is a polarizing figure, but also the veterans didn't come across well, right? They came across as, I didn't want to work hard. And ultimately that was to Eric's detriment too, right? Reverse car wash in Ashburn. You come in clean, you leave dirty. It wasn't anything he did, but he comes through Ashburn and he leaves, and all of a sudden, he's got this tag on him that guys don't like him or don't like playing for him or whatever. When the environment was just as much of a contributing factor as it was Eric Bieniemy's coaching itself. That's why, right? I mean, you mentioned obviously, you need a leader, you need somebody who can call the plays well. But I just think the most important thing is somebody who's going to get everybody pulling the same way. Andy Reid runs a notoriously tough training camp. You never hear a peep about it out of there. Bill Belichick for many years ran notoriously tough practices. You never heard about it until they started losing. You need somebody who's going to instill that kind of atmosphere.
But even then, like Josh McDaniels and Matt Patricia and a lot of these other New England Belichick acolytes tried to do that stuff elsewhere and it didn't work. And so I think there is something to like and there's a touch that Andy Reid has with it, a touch that Bill Belichick has with it. And that there's like an air of toughness about it. And that's a word that we've kind of circled a lot when Logan and I have talked about all this stuff, is like, there's a toughness that works. And if it doesn't work, it winds up being like bravado and machismo, which are not good things,
Yes.
Versus toughness, which is a very good thing.
Yeah. Toxic, right? It becomes a toxic culture all of a sudden if you don't. And that's why Ben Johnson's going to be the star of the class, right? Everybody has spoken highly of him. There's no like, he's just doing what so-and-so does. And I don't think Dan Campbell gets enough credit in Detroit. I think that's an entirely separate conversation, though. What matters is Ben Johnson, leader of men, also very smart at what he does, right? Those are the kinds of guys you have to bring in. And those are the kind of guys who I think want to clean house as soon as they get here, and not necessarily bring their own guys in, but just bring guys in who are young, hungry, eager to work, all those great things. And I do think they'll get a blank check from Josh Harris of it doesn't have to happen in year one, right? I think Josh Harris was pretty clear on that Monday when he was talking with us. I would love for this to happen quickly, but I'd much rather it happen correctly and happen sustainably. Everything he said was like so anti-Harbaugh that like it's kind of funny we're still entertaining it. And yet he also said, I'm flexible to talent. And Harbaugh's the talent, and he just wins. So those are the two things I try to reconcile, right? Like you've got Harbaugh in one bucket and then everybody else in another bucket. And, you can interview 5 defensive coaches, but if you end up hiring Ben Johnson, you didn't lean defensive coach in the end. You just lean towards the best candidate you could get.
Yeah, wrapping up here with Michael Phillips, of course, the Washington Times and 910 The Fan down in Richmond, MP on the mic, 10 a to noon daily, which you can listen to up here in DC on the free Odyssey app. So let's dive in the Harbaugh bucket. Are you interested?
Yes, he's a winner. He's a winner. How could you not be? How could you not at least kick the tires on that? My concern is if you have Peters lined up, is Harbaugh going to want to push him aside? Or is he going to want to marginalize that side of the building? The answer is potentially yes. I think that's
almost certainly yes. That's what he does.
That's what he does. Even if he says otherwise, he's going to end up doing it anyway. I don't think that's a great place to start from. You've had all this great positive momentum, talking to football guys, getting football guy ideas, and then you go that way. You'd have to make him the first and final hire, essentially. On the other hand, all the guy does is win. 4 years from now, he's going to leave. You're going to have to start over. You're going to have to reboot everything, but you probably had some pretty good years between A and B.
Yeah, that's where I think I go, you want to know what? For this team, like, should Jim Harbaugh get an NFL job? And if I was in LA, would I want Jim Harbaugh? Absolutely.
Slam dunk.
We're built to win now. If I'm in Atlanta, I want Jim Harbaugh. I would love that. Like I saw in that same ESPN piece with Graziano and Fowler, like Belichick's considering Atlanta apparently, and they're considering him. And like, I don't hate that fit.
Yeah.
He's still Bill Belichick. He still knows what he's doing. It's a matter of can they figure out quarterback there and whatever. But here, where it has been 25 years of chaos, I don't know that tacking on an extra 4 is the right play. So, and they're not built to win now. They're not built for anything, quite frankly. They need to be built. And I don't know if Harbaugh is the guy. Like, I don't know how far down the list I would just be willing to deal with it to know that I'm going to get a couple good years when I'm trying to build something that is more sustainable long term, when I'm trying to find my Belichick, when I'm trying to find my Mike Tomlin, when I'm trying to find the guy that, look, coaches don't last 15 years in this league. That's a wish and a prayer. And, you get one every 8 or so years gets hired that lasts for 10. And Tomlin's done it in Pittsburgh. Belichick's done it in New England. I guess John has done it, ironically, in Baltimore. But other than that, you don't get that. So trying to plan for 10 years is tough. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try. And Jim Harbaugh is not a 10-year plan.
No. Jim Harbaugh is a very near-term plan. Russell Wilson, right? We're going to have that discussion with Russell Wilson at some point once the Broncos release him, right? Somebody's going to take a bite at that 2-year window apple because they can't do any better. But yeah, to your point, and everything we've heard from Josh Harris is I'm in this for the long haul. That's a hire that communicates I was not actually in this for the long haul.
Yeah. Russell to Atlanta with Harbaugh. How does that go?
Great. As long as until it doesn't.
Would it, or would they?
They would all hate each other and they would win. They would win 12 games and nobody in that building would be able to stand the sound of anybody else's voice.
Fans are like, that sounds awesome. I'm not in the building. Just win the games. Like, can you think of two more polar opposite personalities than Jim Harbaugh and Russell Wilson?
Well, you'd start with Sean Payton and Russell Wilson, certainly.
That's also actually a great point.
But
I think Russ would be like, no, I've done this. Give me a soft. Like, if I'm Russell, I don't even care about winning right now. I just want a 1-year deal somewhere that's not going to be miserable.
Yeah. Belichick and Russ is a very interesting pairing as well. Like a Russ,
I actually think that's a better fit.
A better fit for sure, but like a Russ to the Titans, right, where he can just have a soft landing, be decent, put them in the wild card hunt. A low drama season for Russ may be exactly what's in order for him.
Yeah. Last but not least, speaking of Tennessee, you interested in Vrabel?
I think you got to kick the tires on it. I think he's talented enough. He relates to the players really well. I don't know that he fits this mold right here. I also think this is a horrible botch by Robert Kraft if Vrabel doesn't run out of that tunnel we're in the Polo week 1. He's just such an obvious fit.
I also agree with that.
And there's that report, there's various reports like Belichick wants to stay or whatever. With Vrabel available, the decision makes itself. You've got to make the move now. As Belichick would say, a year early, not a year late.
Yeah. Michael Phillips, dropping that kind of knowledge. In your newspaper, if you still subscribe to such things, they have a website as well, writing about the Commanders for the Washington Times. And, of course, 910 The Fan, talking about it every day down in Richmond, which you can listen to live on the free Odyssey app or on demand on the free Odyssey app. The Rewind feature is excellent. Anytime, anywhere. Michael, thank you, sir. We will talk to you next week, hopefully with a front office person.
I'll look forward to it.
Still to come on The Hoffman Show.
All right, as for more on Adam Peters, Bonte Hill from 95.7 The Game joins us next.
The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
It's the Hoffman Show, hour number 2 on the Team 980. Never read the comments coming up at 5:30. Dave Johnson on the Wizards here on a Wizards game day on your home for Wizards basketball at 6:15. But right now, 5 o'clock means it's time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Our guest today is a pleasure to welcome him back to the show. We had him on this summer. He's our go-to guy when anything Bay Area touches the DMV. It is Bonte Hill from 95.7 The Game out in San Fran. Bonte, what's up, man? Welcome back to the show.
What's up, Craig? Long time no talk, man. Hope you're doing well.
Doing as best as we can here, just in the midst of a coaching and GM search instead of, what you guys get to do, which is talk about playoff football, which is nice. But there's so many Bay Area ties all of a sudden as the Commanders are looking at Adam Peters, and the guy doing the looking is Bob Myers, which is certainly unexpected. Let's start off with Peters real quick. Like, when did he first get on your radar? Because John Lynch is obviously the head guy out there. Kyle Shanahan's probably the most important person in the organization. But the more I learn about Adam Peters, it seems like he's pretty high on that list.
Yeah, he got on our radar basically before the 2019 season because we're trying to figure out, what does John Lynch do? Is he just the face of the franchise? Is he the guy who goes to the podium? Is he the guy that goes out and scout, looks at players? Now, he does do all that, but Adam Peters is tied at the hip. Adam Peters does all the dirty work. And it's a reason why the Niners have keep giving him titles, right? He was a scout. You're the GM now. We're going to give you a better title. We're going to give you a raise because they do not want him to leave the building. He is that important. You think about some of the draft picks and all the draft picks here. Red Carthon's with the Tennessee Titans. He gets some credit there. But a lot of people think Adam Peters is the secret sauce to everything that's happened with San Francisco. So he's been high up on their list. He's been interviewed for jobs, it seems like, the last 3 to 4 years. And, it's just – I think a lot of Niner fans, a lot of people around here think that it's just a matter of time before Adam Peters gets a job that he wants. And look, I think he wanted the San Francisco job. There was rumors about John Lynch going into television or back into television. Was it last season, Craig, or the year before? He jumped on my show, and he told us how Amazon basically came to his house. And was like, look, we watch you. And they offered him a boatload of money. But the job wasn't finished in San Francisco in terms of winning the Super Bowl. He ends up signing the extension, which obviously blocks Adam Peters from being the head honcho. So he's on the draft board, doing all the scouting and orchestrating all the scouting. So he's a guy that the Niners love. He's a guy that the media loves. He's a guy who's considered, you think about some of the articles that have been published ever since Adam Peters was on the Commanders list. And there's articles saying the Niners can't afford to lose Adam Peters. That's how important he is. So if he does become the GM or president of football operations with the Washington Commanders, I think he got a good one. Now, I told you that about Jordan Poole, and that hasn't really worked out. So
yeah, we're gonna come back to your Jordan Poole statement. I feel like we need to revisit that. You sold us a lemon on that one, but we'll circle back to Jordan Poole by the end of this, Bonte. Don't you think I've forgotten that?
I know you haven't forgotten that. I'm sure everybody in the DMV hasn't forgotten him. I seen him when he came to Chase Center back on September 22nd. I said, boy, that's not the same guy I recognize. But anyway, Adam Peters is a good guy. Now, obviously, it's going to go by who he hires as coach, who they draft as players, who your quarterback's going to be, especially in that division where the Eagles and Cowboys sit in. But Adam Peters is a guy that the 49ers have tried to keep in this organization for many, many years, and that says a lot about Adam.
Yes, for sure. And I want to follow up on the ability for them to keep him out there versus coming here in a second. But Anthony, can you put Bonte on hold real quick and see if his phone that's not just in my headphones. Bonte's phone is clicking real bad on us to make it a little easier for everyone to listen. See if we can get a refresh on that. Again, the kind of situation out in San Francisco is that Adam Peters has risen up through the organization, but ultimately he can't be the top guy as long as Lynch is there. And the question I'll ask Bonte in a second when we get him back on the horn here, hopefully with a clearer and better connection, is what kind of steps are left for Peters out in San Francisco, and has maybe Peters realized that he can't get it any other way? Like, he's going to have to leave. That realization happens for a lot of people at a lot of different points in their careers where you just go if I'm going to do this, I have to go somewhere else. And there was that's kind of how Eric Bieniemy wound up here. Of course, EB took kind of a lateral move, OC to OC. Obviously, you got to be a play caller here. But for a guy as Bonte is back with us, Bonte, my question would be is there room still to promote Peters and keep him in San Francisco? Or do you feel like he's reached the point where he realizes he's going to have to go because he's never going to be able to get out from under John Lynch, even if they've promoted Lynch already and they could promote Peters as well?
Yeah, unless they give him GM type money, I think that's the only thing that's going to keep him here at this point. I think he's reached his ceiling in terms of titles because of John Lynch. And you think about some of the players that I was mentioning, some of the players he's credited for, guys like George Kittle. I think he's a pretty good tight end. DJ Jones, who turned out to be a good defensive tackle, now with the Broncos. TJ Reed, a solid DB. Jordan Greenlaw, who's considered one of the nastiest linebackers of all of football. You think about Deommodore Lenoir, Talanoa Hufanga, Elijah Mitchell, and last but not least, Brock Purdy. Peters gets credited with a lot of those discoveries here, so as well as Brian Greasy when it comes to Brock Purdy. But Peters, as an assistant GM, he can go nowhere else in terms of job status and job title because Lynch is here. So it's about time, and we've been bracing for this out here in the Bay Area of Adam Peters moving on to another organization.
Bonte Hill is with us, 95.7 The Game out in the Bay Area. He's with us, of course, here on the Hoffman Show, which you can also catch live on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. So we all expected Monday to be a busy day for us here with Ron Rivera was going to get fired. We knew that. And then Bob Myers gets brought on to this search committee, and we're all like, well, that's a curveball we didn't expect. What was your reaction when you heard the news? And had you guys heard anything out there? Because I was kind of funny. I was telling Anthony, my producer, earlier, I was telling our last guest, Michael Phillips, about this. Zach Lowe was on his podcast saying, oh, yeah, I heard about this. And it's why would I listen to Zach Lowe on an NFL story? Well, because he works with a guy that's now advising. But sometimes, because it's where he used to work. Had you guys heard any rumblings about this? And what's your reaction to Myers helping Josh Harris out find the new front office executive?
No, it was a bombshell for sure. We hadn't heard anything about it. Even Steve Kerr joined our station yesterday, and he says he talks to Bob Myers pretty frequently, and he hadn't mentioned anything to him. So we're kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? Now, we know Bob Myers is going to be with the organization sooner rather than later. I don't see him being a lifer at ESPN in terms of being a basketball analyst or being on a call for a color analyst during a basketball game, but this was different. This was different. Now, I'm still not exactly sure what he's going to be doing outside of advising. Is he going to have a prominent role during the next football season? Is just kind of a one and done, hey, help us get ahead, coach. Thank you for your services. But it is interesting to me that I think back at it. He does go to a lot of 49er games, and he does have a great relationship with John Lynch. And, even Farhan Ghazi, there's rumors that, hey, John Lynch reached out to Bob Myers for this advice, especially when it came to money and contract extensions for other players. Other organizations have reached out to him. He was a former agent, of course, a former agent to a lot of players in this league. So it was definitely a bombshell. Again, I don't know what his role is going to be after the coaching hire, but it is very intriguing how much juice Bob Myers has. And personally, you're not going to find a better guy. I used to do weeklies with him on my show. He's as good as they get in terms of being personable, transparent. Bob Myers is really good. I think, having him on this board, having him kind of quiz coaches and being alongside Rick Spielman there, it's not a bad thing. And I like that the Commanders are doing this. They're exhausting all options to get this hire right. To start a new chapter of Washington professional football. So I don't think you could go wrong here. But I do wonder, Craig, what is his role going to be once you do hire the head coach? Is he still going to be around? Going to be in a suite? Is he going to have a role in the organization moving forward? That one is still confusing to me.
Yeah, I mean, it seems unclear now at this time. Josh Harris basically said, Spielman's here to help hire the coach of the GM. Myers is going to advise me personally. So it just sounds like, if you call your friends sometimes to get advice, and Bob Myers is a great friend to have, and maybe it's kind of accepted that certain people are allowed to call Bob and get advice. I don't know. I want Bob Myers as a friend to be able to call for advice. Yeah. Everything I've ever heard about the guy is that he's like the best friend you could ever have.
And let me tell you a true story, Craig. I double bond radio and television, right? I do the Warriors pre and post game.
Right.
It was during my first year, And I get a random call from, actually it was during the pandemic. And this was when there was a lot of things going on in the world, police brutality, and there was a lot of rioting and strike, and all kind of mess. It was a mess, right? Bob Myers just called me for a random Saturday 30-minute conversation as a white guy to try to relate to what a black guy goes through. Later on that year, I'm doing television for the first time, and he just randomly calls me for about 45 minutes saying, what's your goal? What's your goal in the next 5 years? That's the type of dude this guy is. He knows everything you do. He knows all about your family. He wants to know about your family. He wants to know about your personal life. It's always a personal relationship. That's the type of guy we're talking about. And, by the way, he helped work us straight 4 championships for the Golden State Warriors. So he's as good a person as I've ever met in the professional sporting world. No, hands down, one of those ones that's a legit human being. And you know what? We miss him with the Warriors. We miss him in this organization, and we miss him in this region, man. Some of us were kind of like, wow, he's going over football. He's going to the Commanders. They help on the East Coast team, really? But Bob is as good as they get, Craig.
That's a phenomenal story, and that it tracks with everything I've ever heard from him, podcast interviews, whatever else, and everything I've ever heard about him. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Bonte Hill with us, 95.7 The Game. And last thing, after you share that awesome personal story with us, I hate to bring up the Jordan Poole thing to wrap up here, but you were like, man, you guys are getting a great player. Like, he's gonna rebound. You were so confident, and like, I understand why. Like, when you're in this business, there are some times when you get stuff wrong, and it happens. It happens to all of us. But I would say, like, what has not worked here in Washington for Jordan that you thought he would be able to turn around when he left?
I just thought, when I watched him December 22nd, and he was trying so hard against the Warriors, and he went like 7-21, and I see a player who's slipping, who's turning the ball over, who doesn't take great shots. I see a player where I'm saying to myself, boy, psychologically, I'm not sure he could get back to where he was at during the championship season because of what transpired last trade he kept. The effect that has had on his life, I underestimated that because, look, man, we could all play back to Kermit Washington, plus Rudy Tomjanovich, and Rudy Tomjanovich basically was never heard of as a player ever again. But the damage that punch did to Jordan Poole, I still think it has lingering effects. I see the way he plays. Like, during that championship season, Craig, he averaged 17 points per game during his first postseason. We see a lot of guys when they enter their first postseason, whether it's football, whether it's baseball, whether it's basketball, they struggle. Lights get brighter. There's a lot more pressure. But he thrived. And for sure, he had his clunkers during that run, but he thrived for the most part. But that punch, when it happened, and I thought, man, maybe a change of scenery, his own team, boy, he's going to bounce back in a major way. He's going to be that 20 to 24-point game scorer that we all thought he could be out here on the West Coast. But he just doesn't look happy. He just doesn't, you see the hair, even just the body language, the haircut. He was the king of swag out here. You know what I'm saying? He was playing to the crowd. He was a fan favorite. We were having pool parties. And the fact that I just don't see that. And I just think back to that day. He has never been the same human being. He's a little more guarded. Now, I'm not sure how many interviews he's done out there in D.C., but he just doesn't seem like – and then the player on the court, oh, my God, the shot selection, the passing, the lack of passing, the horrible defense. Oh, man, I feel bad for you guys because I did tell you guys to limit right now. Now, do I think he can turn around at some point? Yes, I do. But, boy, I think we're finding out that leading a team and being the face of the franchise, that might not be it. That might not be it for him. On a championship team, he may need to be your third, fourth, or fifth option. But as a number one or a number two, that's going to be a struggle for him, especially right now being so young. I mean, it's been horrible to watch. I feel bad for you guys. I'm like cringing every time I watch highlights. And I have a vested interest because Blod Wright is a guy who played junior college basketball out here in San Francisco. So I always watch his games. He came through here. He was one of the best JUCO players I've ever seen before he went on to Utah. So I do have a sickness in watching your games a lot. And, it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all, Craig.
Yeah, and I think the thing that like miffs me with Jordan specifically is, like, you talked when you came on at the deadline or at the draft, that's when it was, when that trade happened. You were like, look, he's kind of misunderstood as a person. Like, he cares, he works, and all summer long, that's all I heard. And I don't doubt it. And I've heard from, like, reporters that go in the locker room, like, he still cares a lot. What I don't get is how that guy with that character watches himself on defense and goes, yeah, I'm doing it. It's like, there's just a disconnect of the guy on the court and the guy off the court that needs to be fundamentally repaired. And like playing defense in the NBA is hard as hell. Like these guys are so good. But like I watch him like navigate screens and like the stuff that you have to try to do to be even remotely decent at defense in the league. And I just can't imagine being in a film session and being him and watching it and going, I'm doing it, guys. It's right there. It's like, no, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, forget the plus minus and having the worst plus minus in the league. I don't know how you can play defense with your hands down, which we saw a lot of last year in the Bay Area. It's like you got to move your feet, and he does have good feet, yet it looks like his feet on defense is stuck in cement. It's like, dude, where's your lateral movement? You have it. It's in there. And defense at some point is just a pride thing because you're right. Playing defense against these athletes in the NBA is hard. It's very difficult. They're fast. They're great. They're possibly the greatest athletes on this world, on this planet. And it is. You're not going to stop a lot of guys. These guys get buckets. Can you make it difficult? Can you fight through a screen? Can you be a little more physical? And we started to see that last year. And I just thought maybe I was aloof. Maybe you can call me dumb, but I just thought maybe change the scenery after what transpired last year with this organization, with them basically signing with Draymond. You see what's going on with Draymond now. Maybe he will be better, and it hasn't translated. He's like forgot that, hey, there's another end of the floor. You have to go play defense and be on the other side of the floor. So that's been atrocious. I'm sorry, and you're right. Those film sessions must be cringeworthy for not only him, but the rest of the team saying, wait a minute, we traded for him to make him one of the faces of our franchises.
Right.
And this is what we're getting. And the lack of assist numbers, and it's painful to watch. And look, there's a human element to this. I do think there's going to be, I do think there's some psychological damage. Maybe therapy needs to happen. Maybe he needs to talk to somebody. Maybe he's already talking to somebody, because whenever he goes on the internet, to this day, even on our show, Craig, to this day, we're in January 2024. Everybody still talks about the punch. It's not going anywhere, and it certainly ain't leaving the internet.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, is it's still like that punch, not just for Jordan, but for Draymond, for the Warriors. You know, there's so much fracture within that organization about how everything went down. The fact that they never really found out who leaked it. Like, I follow what's going on out there quite a bit, and I know that it's been a large looming thing that really just changed what was a happy, joyful 10-year run almost in an instant. Bonte Hill, 95-7 the game. Also, as you heard, pre and post for the Warriors on TV. If you're ever watching on League Pass, Bonte, always great to catch up, man. Love when the news crosses in a way that we can do this. Appreciate your time as always.
Likewise, Craig. And by the way, you got some breaking news, man.
Yeah, I see that. So I'm gonna let you go so we can get to that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem, Craig. Happy New Year to everybody out there in the DMV area.
Appreciate you, Bonte. That is Bonte Hill, 95-7 the game. And as Bonte said, there is about as big of breaking news out of college football as you could imagine. We'll tell you what it is and have a quick reaction before Never Read the Comments next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we have...
Breaking news. Oh, snap. News is broken. Breaking news.
About as big as you can get in college football, Nick Saban, Alabama head coach, 7-time national champion, is retiring. This comes out of basically nowhere, no rumors of it anywhere, although it does make sense. He is a man, I believe, in his early 70s at this point, and he has done everything you could possibly do in college football. Saban retiring from the University of Alabama after yet another playoff appearance this year. He basically always found a way to get there. 72 years old is Saban, turned 73 in October. 6 national titles at Alabama, won another one at LSU. This is obviously massive, massive news in terms of any kind of local impact. I do wonder, a job like Alabama being open, does that pull any elite coach out of the running for one of the top NFL jobs? Probably not. It's a different gig. You have to spend so much time recruiting. A lot of NFL coaches would just prefer to coach. You have to spend a lot of time, but it's on football. Your off season's not nearly as demanding as the recruiting nonsense, especially. Recruiting's always been hard, but in NIL, like now there's just a financial component that's kind of the wild, wild west before any kind of regulation hits. Saban retiring a couple years after Coach K retires. Many others, obviously, have legendary coaches have stepped down. I think it's kind of ironic that Pete Carroll and Nick Saban wind up wrapping up their careers as coaches, presumably on the same day. Saban retiring. Carroll basically being told he's not welcome back as the head coach, but he's going to stay on as an advisor for the Seahawks. Of course, Carroll led that USC should have been dynasty, I guess is a good way to put it. In the early 2000s, they lose that game to Vince Young in Texas, but one of the best runs ever over like a 5-ish year span for Carroll at USC. He gets out, goes to Seattle, does a phenomenal job. Saban, a guy who I always wondered if he could have done more in the NFL. Obviously, one of the best football minds around. Things didn't go great in Miami, but also they chose Dante Culpepper over Drew Brees because of medical reasons. What happens if Saban gets Brees? Like, do we know who Sean Payton is today? Probably. Payton was pretty well thought of. But pretty wild some of the ways that these guys cross. And obviously Saban retiring possibly in the same year, we'll see in the same week, that Bill Belichick's career could come to an end as well. 2 longtime friends, former colleagues. Saban was on Belichick's staff back in Cleveland before the Browns moved to Baltimore and became the Ravens. So it was, it's one of the greatest football lives ever. A kid from West Virginia who just kept on cranking out the coaching ranks, coaching career of 50 years, and calling it a day, calling it a career today at the age of 73. And I think the thing that strikes me about Saban is something that always did strike me about Carroll as well. Like, they're not young men, but when you think of 70-year-olds, you don't think of Nick Saban. You don't think of Pete Carroll. Guys out there literally running around. And my hope is that when I am 70 whatever years old, 73, that I also can run around, that I also can play catch, that I am healthy enough to do the things that they have done. So hats off to Nick Saban. I would imagine if he wants to go into television, he will have a seat on ESPN waiting for him, especially as ESPN, I believe, is getting the SEC next year, the SEC on CBS coming to a close. So if he wants a chair on College Game Day, he's going to get one. If he wants a chair, if he just wants to sit in his own chair, he just bought some property in Florida, I believe. If he wants to set up a satellite and a camera at his home in Florida, they will make that work. Or he just can be an old rich guy and go out on the lake and have a good time being retired. So congrats to Nick Saban. Saban, the breaking news, retiring from coaching at the age of 73, 7 national championships, 6 at Alabama. That is the breaking news. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, back to the Commanders and a little segment we like to call Never Read the Comments. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Just after 5:30 on a pretty monumental day in terms of the history of football coaching. Pete Carroll speaking just a few moments ago, basically saying he would have loved to continue as Seahawks head coach, but ultimately the organization was like, we're going to make you an advisor now. So we'll see what's next for Pete Carroll. And if you just missed the breaking news, Nick Saban retiring at the University of Alabama. Anthony, good luck to the next guy there. You always want to be the guy that follows the guy.
Yeah, but it's all I don't.
But at the same
be a lot of
time,
pressure.
At the same time, like you want to be the guy that follows the guy, but I want to be the guy who inherits Nick Saban's recruits.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that could be a good jump start to your career. In a sense.
Yeah, I wonder, like,
but people might,
if you're Bill O'Brien, do you go back to college?
To Bama?
Yeah.
I think he's probably definitely going to be a leading candidate there.
Or like if you're James Franklin at Penn State and you're kind of stuck being Penn State. You win 10 games every year. You have no shot against Ohio State and Michigan. You just can't cross that threshold. But if you were at Bama, you go from being at a 4-star to a 5-star, if you will. Right? If you play FIFA or FC, whatever they call it now, and they have every club is ranked. They used to do this on the college football game too. Like prestige-wise. And like Chelsea and Arsenal and Bayern Munich are like 5-star clubs. Like Penn State's probably like a 4.5. I mean, historically it's 5, but the problem is the guy that got it to be 5 turned out to be a terrible person. And Joe Paterno, or at least someone who allowed terrible people to do awful things. So needless to say, the luster's off in Happy Valley, compared to Alabama, which is like the 5-star of 5 stars. Ohio State, Michigan, like that might be it. USC historically, but like even they have fallen off and they haven't done anything significant in 20 years. So point is, if you're like stuck at Penn State and Alabama's like, we'll pay you to get out of that contract, would you go?
I think James Franklin is going to be too loyal to Penn State. I don't think he leaves.
I also don't think Penn State's going to let him out of the contract.
Now, a Dabo?
Dabo to Alabama is interesting.
I think Dabo could be interesting.
Clemson's kind of falling apart.
Yeah, I think Dabo.
Dabo is from Alabama. That's an interesting one.
And I don't know. I mean, we don't know if Ryan Day necessarily stays at Ohio State just because of his track record against Michigan the last 3 years. So
yeah. But then again, Harbaugh's about to leave. So
what if he doesn't?
So going to be a fun coaching. You thought the NFL coaching carousel is fun. Wait till you see what happens in the trickle down effect in college football. And there's probably a bunch of names we're not even thinking of. No, your hot up and comers. Your Dan Lannings at Oregon, et cetera, et cetera. All right. With all of that said, it's just after 5:30 on a Wednesday, so it's time to do the thing they told us not to do.
We tried to warn them. They didn't listen.
Yeah!
Every week, the Hoffman Show goes into the belly of the beast.
We read those comments, baby.
Never read the comments.
All right, we do this weekly here on the radio, live in full effect. We dive into the comments section at Greg Hoffman at the Team 980. Comments on our on-demand clips of the Hoffman Show and the Take Command podcast. And the coaching carousel is turning in the NFL, and opinions are wide and varied. We're going to start with an amuse-bouche of comments. Anthony, do you know what an amuse-bouche is?
Based off the context, maybe just a plethora, several,
No, not quite. An amuse-bouche, I'm trying to remember the direct translation, but it's basically like it wakes up your palate.
Okay.
So they give you like that little piece of fruit or whatever at the start of a meal, like a fancy one, to be like, hey, wake up. You're about to get some flavor. So an amuse-bouche pairing of comments. At Caleb Cars says, the fact that we aren't screaming for Vrabel raises red flags. Locked on Law. These comments were literally back to back as I scrolled through the comments on my YouTube studio. The fact that we aren't screaming for Vrabel raises red flags. Locked on Law. Can Mike Vrabel coach up the next draft pick into a franchise quarterback? No. Let's move on. Back to back, Anthony. How come we're not getting Vrabel? Please. Let's not be serious. We're not getting Vrabel.
I think they were listening to Linnell yesterday then.
One of them was on Linnell. One of them was on our chat with Lindsey Zarniak. But, yeah, I think it just shows, like, different people value different things. And it's going to be pretty fascinating. Like, I know what I value. but that might be different than what Josh Harris values. And by the way, what Josh Harris values might be a little bit different than Mitchell Rales, a little bit different than David Blitzer, a little bit different than Magic Johnson, Rick Spielman, and Bob Myers, which is the committee. So that's going to be interesting to see, like, what are the non-negotiables? What are the things everyone agrees upon? Do those things rise to the top? And then what things does Harris care about as the lead decision maker that other people are certainly going to have voices on in the room, but might ultimately get overrode by other factors. So this is why you put together a committee, because different people care about different things. And then you come together and you make the best decision as a group, understanding a common goal. That's how committees should work. When they work well, they get awesome results. When they don't work well, people yell at each other and then they bitch about it to newspaper writers afterwards. It's continuing on, more specifically into some of the comments. We talked about one word to describe the Ron Rivera era, and I thought this was a great answer from our guy Blaine, who's always listening to the show on YouTube at the Team 980. Blaine says, kaleidoscope is the one word. A series of fractured patterns. Looks pretty for a second, but it's just not repeatable. And I think that is a fair characteristic of the Ron Rivera era. Like, there were times where we got really psyched about certain things. Eric Bieniemy certainly is probably the shiniest image that we saw. It's like, oh, this guy's going to be great. Early returns on Sam Howell were fantastic. You know, the defense would go on these stretches where they'd give up no points and they just crush people. And you'd be like, yeah, this is awesome. Some of the 4-game winning streaks, Taylor Heineke's excitement. Like, there's all these little fractured pieces of brilliance, but that's because it's the NFL. These are the best players on the planet, and eventually stuff goes right, even for the not best of the best. And unfortunately, they had a lot of not best of the best. And as has been chronicled multiple places, most prominently in Ben Standig's story in The Athletic, there was never a cohesive vision. It was a constant chasing of headlines and of narrative, as opposed to a constant relentless chase of a singular long-term plan. Mary Bowles 6908 commented on one of our videos at Craig Hoffman, said, I don't get how everyone says Ron was a good guy. Yes, he went through a lot, but does anyone remember Ron throwing certain people under the bus to the media? He lied to draft picks like Branch, talking about Brian Branch from Detroit, who said in an interview that Washington had promised him that if he was there, they would take him. They obviously did not. Or he was bringing players back, and then they learned he lied to them. There's questionable things he did that don't make him look favorable, just like telling media about players coming to him about Bieniemy being too hard. Ron didn't need to throw him under the bus to the media. No need to say any of that. Tell me all this isn't changing culture or being a good guy. This is tough, but I will say I do think some of the Ron stuff is good guy stuff is a little overrated. In terms of how it gets framed within the context of the job. What I will tell you is the more people have interactions with Ron Rivera, the more they like him. The farther away they are, the more I think you have opinions like this. And frankly, I'm someone who did not get to talk to Ron very often. So I count myself in the removed, observing actions, not getting to personally experience the man category. But I do know he genuinely cared about people. The story that Tress Way told the other day was great. I mean, Lindsay Zarniak in the video that this comment was on talked about some of her personal interactions and told a story about how she had the game for Fox for the Carolina Panthers the week after he had gotten fired in Carolina, and the players were pretty distraught. Like, players really liked him. But there's a lot of coaches that players like that aren't good at the job, and I do think a lot of the points brought up here are valid. I think a lot of the stresses and pressures of the job Ron Rivera did not handle well, especially when they mixed with the need as part of the job to publicly comment. I do not think he did a good job of being consistent with who he was and maybe what he thought, or maybe this is this is a flawed part of him, that he did throw people under the bus. There was favoritism. There was nepotism. There was a lot of things of chasing the narratives as opposed to having a kind of a core values that drove you and a plan that I think turned out to treating people poorly at times. And I think all of that is a part of his legacy. But at the end of the day, the thing that I do think is true is when he did stuff that I would categorize as not great, Bob. It was kind of politics stuff, the pressures of the job, or sometimes covering for someone else. I don't think it happened out of malice. But with that said, intention isn't everything. Impact is more important. And the impact he occasionally had on people wasn't good. Not that any of us are perfect, but I do think that if we just say like, oh, Ron's a great guy because he didn't do X, Y, and Z that a lot of other football coaches do and whatever, and the players liked him, that is probably overly whitewashing his 4 years here and kind of the way he acted during them. I think another point that's important off of that is something that John Allen said on the Junkies the other day. He talked about the culture, and he's like, there's kind of two different cultures, and people get them twisted. There's the in the building culture and in the locker room culture. And I think the in the building, when you talk about changing the culture, I think that Ron was great in the building. Like everyone around the building respected him. He was really kind and, never talked down to people. Like people felt like they were a part of the organization. You see some of the staffers, like team photographers, et cetera, posting up the farewell message from Ron or about Ron on their own personal Instagrams or Twitter accounts or whatever. Like that tells me something. Nobody was doing that when Jay Gruden was here. But Allen did say that, like, for instance, when Jay was here, the atmosphere and the culture within the locker room itself was great. And that seemed to fall off under Rivera. Some of the favoritism, some of the lack of holding certain people up to the standard, some of the stuff that was allowed to slide because Ron was a little bit too nice if you want to be benevolent about it, or just wasn't up to the task of disciplining people and creating a culture of accountability that he claims to be and that a lot of people, I think, put on him. He just wasn't up to it. And that had an effect in the locker room that was hugely negative, that when you look at, how certain players were treated or how every player was treated during the Gruden era, there were times Jay did stuff that Jay didn't really want to do because it didn't help. Like, it made his job harder as the X's and O's guy, but he knew he had to do it. And there was also an empowerment of the players to do stuff. I think here, Ron took on, like, that role, and I think it undercut some of the leadership of players at times. And I don't know. I just think in general, the player leadership thing was complicated, as illustrated by the Charles Leno and Logan Thomas comments, as Jahan's comments, Allen's comments. Not very cohesive. Not great in terms of the culture in the locker room while Ron was here, certainly at the end. But also, that's losing for you. Nobody's on the same page. Shannon Wilson, 6216, says, if he was a great coach and players were distraught when he left Carolina, why was he able to get the most out of the players in Washington? Me personally, I'm thinking logically, if I have an admiration for someone, then I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that person succeeds, or do everything and anything that I can to help them get through whatever it is they're trying to succeed in. Quarterback can't be the only reason because the rest of the team didn't do well either. Defense, special teams, none of the other phases were great. Even the draft picks that he made haven't panned out other than Brian Robinson. No other player has done well that he was involved with personally selecting at any draft. That's an overstatement. There's a guy named Sam Cosmi. He's quickly turning into one of the best guards in football. That's sweet. Cam Curl, fine. Like, we don't need to parse out. Everyone knows the players that have been at least okay, but he selected 0 Pro Bowlers, and that is atrocious in 4 years. I think a couple of things. One, it's all the stuff I just said about him not being up for the job, and like the technical acumen to do it wasn't there. And I think that is fed by the fact that he bit off way more than he could chew. If Ron Rivera was just a football coach, then maybe it works out. Maybe. I don't think so, because I don't think he's that great of a football coach. But it would certainly go better than it did here. He tried to do that, the personnel stuff, and kind of be a team spokesman during an extremely turbulent time. Not a formula for success. Ultimately, that's the biggest reason, is he was trying to do everything. And when you try to do everything and you're not very good at delegating, and you don't have a strategic vision that everybody understands, because he didn't have one at all, then you're going to fail. And that's what he did. As for what is next, some comments that I think were interesting. Justin Evans, 182, says, Craig, I definitely couldn't agree with you more on your toughness point. Win, lose, or draw, I want us to suck to play against. The mindset is almost guaranteed to win at least 2 or 3 games, in my opinion. Justin, as you were agreeing with me, in mine too. I think when you talk about toughness, it was funny. There was another comment, Anthony, that I genuinely laughed out loud at. Someone was like, Shanahan and McVay are tough. Vrabel's I don't think Vrabel wins games because he can beat up other coaches. And I was like, not physically tough. By the way, the correct answer for which NFL coach would win a Royal Rumble is Mike Vrabel, correct? Without question? If there was just a fight of all 32?
Yeah.
I guess you'd have a death showdown in the final, Vrabel and Dan Campbell.
Ooh, I forgot all about Dan. I think D'Amico, he's young, he's a little small, but I think he could be a little feisty.
D'Amico would be exceptional.
Yeah.
He's strong, he's tough, he's
Dan
young.
Campbell, Vrabel, yeah.
But Vrabel's a little psycho. And Dan Campbell's a lot psycho.
Yeah, he's in fighting trim.
That dude drinks 1,000 milligrams of caffeine a day. He's not insane. Well.
Yeah.
D'Amico's too sane.
Yeah.
Now, he did play linebacker in the NFL. Maybe he's got maybe he can still snap and get into that mode.
Uh-huh.
But McVay would be a pain in the butt because he's scrappy and he's just full of energy. But eventually Dan Campbell would be like, hey, boom, out of the ring.
Yeah. I think Mike McDaniels would somehow hack some systems and have some pranks in the ring. I'm just saying, he would have something up his sleeve.
Yeah,
I'm on to him.
I think you're definitively not wrong. Belichick would just walk in and walk out and be like, I'm done. I know what's up here. We're good. Saleh, low key, watch out for him.
Ooh, yeah.
But I think Dan Campbell and Mike Vrabel. Yeah. The point is, toughness does not come from one coach's ability to beat up the other coach. It's how you practice. It's the standard you hold people to. There's a toughness that is toughness is not machismo. Machismo is fake. Bravado is fake. Toughness is real. Toughness is doing the hard thing. Toughness is not I don't know. This is a weird analogy. I'm just going to say it, but toughness is going to therapy, not soaking it all in internally and just letting your emotions destroy you. That's weak. Toughness is going to therapy or seeking help. Understanding your place in the world and doing the work. That's tough. And that kind of thing works in the NFL because you create buy-in. And so doing the work of the interpersonal relationships, doing the work of the schematics and the late nights and but also having the guts to tell your coaches to go home because they're worn out and they're not actually doing a good job because they're so burnt out. There is this fine line that you're willing to make hard decisions that relates to toughness. And then there's a standard that you hold people to that you will not let them slip. You will not do the thing. This is I guess what I'm trying to say. Toughness is not taking the path of least resistance just because it's the easy thing to do. Toughness is willing to fight through some awkward situations, tough conversations, whatever, because it's ultimately the right thing to do. And that, from a coaching standpoint, translates extremely well. I think Vrabel is great with that, but a guy like Shanahan, a guy like McVay, O'Connell, D'Amico, Pete Carroll, all these guys have it. In a way that really matters, and it's why they've all won games. Last but not least, Anthony, this was a funny. All right, there are two. Actually, let's go 2 funny ones to end it here. The first one was on one of our Sam Howell videos, and DMV_artist says, to say Sam Howell looked as though he could be the Commanders' future quarterback after watching the first half of the season isn't a hot take, because some people were trying to kill me in the comments for saying that. He was playing better than most first-year starting quarterbacks. However, he unraveled within the last 6 weeks. You get new information, you change your opinion. If I tell you I'm going to get Bob to give me a ride home, then I see Bob's drunk, so I decide to take an Uber home. It doesn't mean I lied to you. It means I changed my way of thinking after seeing new information.
That is That goes in the top 5, I guess, so far of 2024. That's the best comment of 2024.
Easily best comment of 2024. Maybe one of the best ones we've ever had.
Yeah, that's funny.
This one's just funny. Buddy Barlow 9604 says, I like Craig and I watch a lot of Craig, but sometimes I really do think you love to hear yourself talk. And buddy, let me tell you something. I host a solo radio show for 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. There ain't no other option. This time doesn't fill itself. Could I sit here and hit funny buttons all day?
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
I mean, sure, that killed about 8 seconds. It ain't for the love of my own voice. It's because they pay me to do it. But thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We're doing what we can over here. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And every single Wednesday at 5:30, we hit never read the comments. Tons of breaking news today. College football coaching news, NFL coaching news. We'll get you all caught up on all of it next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Always live on the free Odyssey app. And, of course, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. I got to say, Anthony, that open, the I do not like Aaron Rodgers very much open, that one's aged real well. That's one of my best takes I've ever had.
And it was a good rhyme.
It was. That guy sucks. I hope that soon his footballs turn into ducks.
I didn't like that one.
No. There's another word that rhymes with all that I like to say
I know.
to Aaron Rodgers. But I give some of them about having my job, so I'm not going to.
That's
See what we did there?
Yeah.
What, Linnell?
He said, what, Linnell?
I liked it.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks. Appreciate you. Linnell, by the way, coming up at 6:30 tonight across the hall over on 106.7 The Fan. No overtime?
Linnell is hanging out. He's going to get a car ride with me home.
He's literally just hanging out.
Yeah, he's really hanging out.
Okay. You were on with the Rooster earlier. Here, hold on. Give Linnell a microphone. There's 3 of them in there. One of them's got to work.
You want that one?
He won't have a camera on YouTube.
Is that 2 or 3?
Sorry, YouTube audience, but you'll be able to hear Linnell.
Hello,
Hey, Linnell. You got headphones and everything. Love that. So when I got in today, which was, by the way, weird bit today. Today was the first day I took the Metro since before the holidays because there was one day that I had to drive in, and I was like, wait, it's the holidays. There's no traffic. I'm just going to drive every day. So I did. But now that there's traffic and everything again, I was like, okay, the Metro is actually more efficient, nevertheless more cost effective over time. So I'm going to start taking the Metro again. The train felt like it was so slow.
It wasn't just you. I promise you it wasn't. Me,
you had that too.
Essick, yes, we were moving literally at 2 miles an hour. I don't know what was going on the green line. I don't know. It happened from my trip to Shady Grove, and then when I crossed over to green, it happened too. So red line and green line.
So I wonder, CK was saying, because I was supposed to, I had to give him some information when I got in. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, sorry, I'm late. The train literally was just slow today. He's like, I don't know, maybe it was a safety thing. Because there's all that flooding yesterday.
Oh, well.
Maybe that's it.
Metro just stinks.
If someone knows why the trains were literally slow today, please tweet me at Craig Hoffman and inform me. Because I've complained about various public transportation things before, and there are enough people in D.C. that take public transportation and know things and can give us more information. I probably could also search for it and possibly find it, but whatever the reason is, I would like to know. And I'd like to know if it's going to be that way tomorrow, because if it is, I'm driving again tomorrow. I would like to know when the trains are going to be back up to speed. I will take Metro. I will pay for it, the whole deal.
Yeah. They don't over-communicate very well at WMATA.
No.
Eric Bieniemy would be very disappointed in them.
I'm not letting you start a football discussion. You're here for a bit right now.
I know.
What were we talking about before that? Before the...
Oh, you were talking about green eggs and ham and Aaron Rodgers.
Talking about that.
And then you went on to talk about Linnell catching a ride with me.
So when I get in today, that's what I was going to say.
Okay, yeah.
When I got in today, I walked past this studio that is the same studio that the Chris Russell show happens in, and that Linnell sits right over there. And on Wednesdays, and literally it was kind of the joke that I make all the time. You guys were just screaming at each other.
Depends on what time you got here.
At that point, it was 3:40.
Yeah, after 3 o'clock, things got off the rails. I forgot what Chris Russell said, but I'd had enough.
You had enough.
I'd had enough. I genuinely had. That 3 o'clock hour was feisty, man.
What were you guys talking about?
It was Mike Vrabel conversation. We were talking about. We brought up your favorite offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy. I think it was the Vrabel discussion, though. I had to sit and listen to Rooster try to poke holes in Mike Vrabel, and I just don't see how someone can sit there and poke holes in him without having an agenda. So I first apologized to him, though, because I took my anger on the fan base out on him, because the fans are tweeting crazy things at me because I said on your show yesterday that Mike Vrabel should be catapulted to the top of the Commanders head coaching list, and people are going crazy.
I mean, as I said yesterday, I think there's kind of 2 easy holes to poke in Vrabel. But there's holes you can poke in every candidate. So these are the holes for Vrabel. This is not me saying he's a bad candidate. In fact, he's a phenomenal candidate. Those 2 holes are he's a defensive head coach, and that means if you hit your quarterback and he has a great relationship with the OC, that OC is going to get hired and go somewhere else, and you got to replace him. That is just part of a defensive head coach that you're going to have to deal with, that you never have to deal with an offensive guy in reverse, because like there's no such relationship that's as important between your middle linebacker and your defensive coordinator. It's just not a thing. Defenses are more adaptable than offenses. So that's one. The other thing that I would say is he did just get fired because he didn't win enough the last 2 years. And that seems like somewhat of a relevant plot point, although I would argue if I'm defending him, that had a lot more to do with like roster construction and some front office decisions.
Bingo.
Than anything Vrabel did.
Last year, they were literally the most injured team in the league.
Yeah, which is not a great way to win.
No, it's not.
What was Rooster saying?
Rooster was just being a contrarian. That's what he was. Yeah, I know, right? Shocker. He was basically trying to say that, you know.
Wait, he's Mr. Defensive Head Coach.
Well, no, he was talking about Vrabel's going to want an immense amount of power, and I'm like, you don't know that, Chris Russell. Why are you saying that? There's the reason things went south, as I said yesterday, is because the owner in Tennessee decided to hire a general manager that did not share the same ideologies as our head coach.
Right, and I think Rain Carthon's going to be a very good GM. But
he is. I want to know what they're not seeing eye to eye about, because those seem like 2 bulls that would just run roughshod in the china shop. So, like, what are they disagreeing on?
That's a great question.
I think it's rebuild versus continue to try to compete, because when you look at their draft picks, they went guard, quarterback. That doesn't scream – that screams rebuild in terms of, like, what they already had on the roster.
Well, I mean, it also screams filling some holes that they had on the roster.
I mean, Tannehill's 2 years removed from
balling. Yeah, but also when you're in your 30s, like,
who is all-star caliber
quick.
player in this
It
league.
does. Life
He goes
that's
every
very
single
tough.
time
You got to tell
to
me.
the rim with force
I'm 34
and
next
trying
month,
to
bro.
get to the
Your
rim
birthday's
without
next month already.
flopping
Yeah.
and
February.
not trying to get foul calls. He
It
gets
seems like
2
just yesterday that Rachel was in here with cake, and I was wearing
How's
those
that
silly
possible?
happy birthday
How are you
glasses.
going to explain that to me?
Yeah.
They had to win tonight?
That was like one of our first big
If
YouTube
that's the
moments.
case, just let
That
us
was
know
before
so
we
we
were
don't
streaming
show up for
live
the
every
game.
day.
Just give them a win.
Yeah.
That was not
We
fair.
were recording stuff,
And
but
this
we
is
weren't
not happening
streaming
first
live
time for
yet.
us. Scotty Barnes
That was
is going to
captured
be
for
all-star.
posterity.
He's going to be the face of this league. And
We make
what's
the
happening
documentary
over
on the
here,
show. That'll be-
the whole season,
The Hoffman
I've
Show,
been
30
holding
for
it
30.
back. It's a complete
That'll be
crap.
That'll be a moment. There'll be some video of me in glasses, some poor production intern on some production unit.
Yeah.
Documentary producer's gonna have to go through
there is
all of
no
our YouTube
explanation.
shows.
They just come up
Find
here,
all
they
the stuff.
review
Anthony,
it,
I hope
and they
you
see
kept
what they
good
want
notes.
to see. They don't
I
want to
think
hear
I
us
have.
what we got
We
to
actually
say.
have all the
They don't
rundowns.
want to hear the players.
there we go.
They
Because
You
you're
wanna
organized.
you wanna know
want
what's
to
funny
protect
though,
us.
and something that we
Over
said we
again,
were
they
gonna
got
do that we
36
actually haven't
free
been good
throws,
about?
23 free throws in the
Yeah.
fourth quarter.
Oh,
What
I
are we
thought you were going to say
talking about?
kicking me off of your rundown.
What are we talking
'Cause I'm
about?
also
How
on
are we
your
gonna
rundown.
supposed to play?
You are on the rundown.
Yes.
We don't kick you off.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Sometimes you kick yourself off because you move around a bunch.
Well, I'm a mover.
Yeah, and a shaker.
Mover and a shaker and an earthquaker.
You gotta watch out for that guy.
yo. Hey, yo! Is what you wanted to say.
All right. We were going to catch up on the news of the day. We kind of did. We talked about some football stuff in there. And the news is
hold on, Craig, I'm
the
sorry.
trains are slow.
I'm sorry. I want to have a debate on your program with one of your friends,
Which friend?
Clinton Yates.
About?
I want to debate Clinton Yates on the Wizards and their move. I want to.
That won't end well for you.
Does Craig Hoffman know who I am?
Do you know who he is?
I'm not scared of the big network, Craig Hoffman. If Clinton Yates wants to verbally, I took issue with Clinton. This is kind of old and outdated. Clinton kind of like dunked on me on Twitter not too long ago because of my stance.
Dave Johnson is next.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Tonight, Wizards are in Indiana, and that is where we find our good friend, Dave Johnson.
Time to get the radio party started.
Blocked by Bilal Coulibaly. Oh, boy, did he stuff him. Left wing pool, it's there. Oh, that's a pool party. Near the basket, slam right in. And there, they're stealing the slam. You better go off. Intercepted by Kispert. Kispert now, foul line. Oh, slam. Ooh, that'll jar your preserves.
It's time for Dave Johnson on a Wizards game day.
Kuzma for three. Oh, it's there. It's there. Big shot.
On the Hoffman Show.
Out to the guest line we go. Dave, good evening. How are you, sir?
You know, one of the best basketball arenas in our country, Gainbridge Fieldhouse. This truly is. I mean, if people watch the movie Hoosiers, I mean, this is a basketball state. And the way they did this, they call it a Fieldhouse. Now, obviously, it's an arena with suites and all that kind of stuff. But it's still, as you look around, you get what they're getting at. It's a bit of a Fieldhouse. So it's always great to come to Indianapolis, even when it's 5 degrees outside, which I think it feels like right now.
Here's the thing about Indianapolis, though. It's actually not that bad when it's cold because you barely have to go outside. They have all the tunnels, like the tunnel system in the city, to walk indoors, as I well know as someone who has gone there in February year after year for the NFL Combine.
Right, but they don't have a tunnel to my favorite sandwich shop when I had to go out to get lunch today. So I did experience some hardship. But no, it's a wonderful place.
Well, as someone who is probably going to go back to Indianapolis in the future, even if it's not this year, what is your favorite sandwich shop? I must know.
Well, it's Potbelly. Potbelly is one of my favorites.
That's not exactly Indiana specific. Yeah.
No, it's not exactly. But you know what? It's close. But not that close. I did feel the cold today.
I see. Are you going to get to St. Elmo's and clear your sinuses?
Well, you know, listen, St. Elmo's, this is a travel tip for you. We were just talking about this. I hate to break it to people. St. This shrimp cocktail, it feels like an army of ketchup was attacked by a rogue army of horseradish. And it's like, I don't get the fascination with it. I get that, you know, you want to blow people's brains out with horseradish, but that seems like something that you and I did in college when we were trying to punk somebody, you know, and then they drank 7 beers afterwards or something. So I'm just not and now I'm going to get deported from Indianapolis for saying this, but I'm just not on the St. Elmo's train.
Okay.
Because of that shrimp cocktail.
Yeah, no, that is the famous thing to do for those that don't know in Indianapolis is the shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo's. I like it. I don't know. I also like, it's not like how much can you put on, but it is kind of, I will say it is kind of fun to go, and I will withhold the name to protect them and also myself. But I was there last year with my buddy Chris Gorez. I will name drop one person. It was my buddy Chris Gorez, who is my fitness podcast co-host, Jason Wersland, who is the guy who created the Theragun, which is a pretty cool one, and then a current NFL position coach who is a former NFL player. I will leave his name out of it, but he had never tried the shrimp cocktail before, and let's just say the NFL player, I think Dave would be in your camp, or the NFL coach is in your camp, that he's not about that life. He no longer wants to ever have to confront shrimp cocktail again.
Yeah, no, and I love horseradish, by the way. But it's just, I don't, you know, I don't get that excited like some people do. Now, having said that, don't use me as the barometer. I'm just saying that's, you know, my take.
Yes.
And I went to a different place last night, which had shrimp cocktail and horseradish, but it was enjoyable to me.
Okay, that's good. I will say this. Here's my last indie pro tip for anybody listening. St. Elmo's is great. It's a fine steakhouse. The food outside of the shrimp cocktail is excellent. But if you would like a similar experience with literally a shared kitchen and about, 3/4-ish of the price, just go to Harry and Izzy's next door. That's actually the secret to St. Elmo's.
All right, and then again, if you want the real Indiana experience and you'll save a lot of money, go to Steak and Shake, because you know you're in Indiana when you have a Steak and Shake. So there's that option as well if you want to get with the people.
Yes, no, that is true. The Steak and Shake, I've heard. I am not I'm incapable of staying up this late, but I've heard the Steak and Shake at about 4 a.m. During the NFL Combine is definitely a place to be. I definitely think there have been stories broken there from all kinds of NFL people probably having had, maybe 7 beers after a shrimp cocktail and winding up there at 4 a.m. Dave Johnson is with us from Indianapolis here on the Hoffman Show. All right, to the task at hand here. Wizards come into this game 6-30. They come into it riding a 5 game losing streak. A close one against the Thunder the other night by the end of it, Dave, but it just feels like whenever we get those encouraging signs, they tend to fall back off, and they just can't find any level of consistency. Has anyone talked about that lately, and what are you seeing in that regard?
Well, again, like most NBA raters, as you could probably hear, this. I think they are hearing the public address announcer in Fort Wayne, which is the home of the Indiana Pacers G League affiliate, the Matt Eberflus.
Yes, who's a play-by-play announcer is a young man named John Nolan, who I went to college with. So there's your,
really? Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Right. Well, yes. Well, they're part of the. But it's very loud here. But if you were talking about this season, look, against Oklahoma City, that's a good team, and that's a team that the Wizards are basically they're using the same playbook. It's
someone in this room stole
a few years ago. Lost the first round of playoffs, decided to pivot. They went through a 22-win season, a 24-win season, and then last year got into the play-in. And this year, they're 10, 11, 12 games above 500. But my point of bringing that up is it's a painful process if you look at the results. But you're not going to replace. Let's put Bilal Coulibaly in the fourth quarter against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So what is happening to this Wizards team, if you look at the games, it's competing. It's 116-110 against the Oklahoma City Thunder the other night. They ended up losing by 8. Even the Knicks game, they paid for a bad first half, but then, they made a game of it in the third quarter. But they got behind by more than 20 against the Knicks. You can't do that in the NBA. A 15-point lead in the NBA is not safe. 20-plus, typically the script is a team will make a run, get it down to about 10 or 8, and then they run out of gas, or the other team makes adjustments. So, again, this season is about you're looking at, like tonight, this was the last time we played the Pacers. One of the best games the Wizards put together because they put it all together for 40 minutes. We saw Jordan Poole, 30 points and 8 assists. Corey Kispert, 23 points off the bench. This is not a Pacers team that protects the paint well. The Wizards got to the free throw line 26 times. And this is a Pacers team, and Wizards teams are 1 and 2 in pace. So they're going to get after it tonight. Can the Wizards make it 2 in a row against the Pacers? You do try to win where you're not going to have success all the time is because within these games, the Wizards are trying to develop players at the same time. And it's an important part of the process. And as we talked with Matt Pinto of the Oklahoma City Thunder before their game, I mean, they're fun to watch now, and they're flying high. But it wasn't that long ago they were a 24-win team. And it's real hard to be patient during that period of time. And this is a period of time that, our patience is going to be tested. And it's a real time to focus on, who is going to stay with this Wizards team. I don't know. I don't know where the trades are going to be made. What players are going to receive offers that are going to be too good for the Wizards to refuse. I mean, it's an exciting time because the Wizards do have flexibility to build for the future. But in that process, there's going to be a lot of games where, they were right there, but they didn't get it.
Yeah, for sure. And, one thing that was really nice the other night, too, with the rebounding we've talked about has been such an issue. Kyle Kuzma, 15 big rebounds the other night. See if he can continue that. If he can be more consistent, I think the score lines will be a lot more consistent for the Wizards. Of course, at Indiana tonight, at Atlanta this weekend, and then back home on MLK Day, Monday, against Detroit. All those games right here on the Team 980. Dave, as always, thanks for your time, sir, and enjoy your post-game steak and shake tonight.
Yeah, maybe I'll try St. Elmo's postgame just for grins because we are staying in Indianapolis tonight. But
there you go.
I appreciate everyone staying with us because we have some developing storylines on this team. Again, but we knew this going in. It was not going to be a season where we'll be counting the victories.
Without question. All right, Dave. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week. All right, that is Dave Johnson with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, we will wrap up this radio program on a Wednesday with real things, real people said into real microphones. Anthony, I know it's your Friday, but come on. You really have to rub it in?
Did I really rub it in, Chris?
You're fired. You're fired.
For 3 days?
You can't come back till next Tuesday.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Get out of here. Anthony is headed down to Flag football nationals. Do we have a diagnosis? We're not playing? The hamstring is not going to cooperate?
So the thing is, it's supposed to rain Friday. We have games on Friday, so I definitely would not play if I was to play. And I think it's supposed to rain Saturday, so I don't think I'm playing. So if we make it to Sunday, hopefully it's like sunny, and I may consider, but I don't know if I'm playing. Too many people have told me not to play.
Including?
Zaires told me not to play. My coach from Little League has told me not to play, and also Craig.
Yeah, I have also told you, putting my fitness hat on.
Yeah.
I think the phrase was, if I was your guy, because you were like, I got to go see my guy to see if I can clear it. And I was like, if I was your guy, I wouldn't clear you.
I'm not sprinting until next Thursday.
Yeah, that's after.
We couldn't find any availability for me to go see him tomorrow. So really, I could have possibly.
You have not built up the tolerance, sir. No. You haven't built up the tolerance to sprinting. You gotta ramp. You can't jump to the top. It's risky.
I know.
It's risky.
We're supposed to run routes though next Thursday.
Couple of snaps here and there, maybe.
Yeah.
But you don't want to find out that it was a bad one. But I know it sucks because it's nationals.
I know.
But
I have to wait.
You'll be there cheering on your teammates.
Yep.
You'll be a great teammate, coaching it up.
Yep.
We wish you well.
Thank you.
Vic will be here.
Yep. Holding down the fort.
We'll do our best. Do our best without you.
Yes.
I also want to note that there are 5 more fine points on the board back there for me.
I never added the 15 that I was supposed to add from the other time either when you were home.
What did I do?
I
know that is correct. I just don't forget. I don't remember what I did.
It was it the audio? I couldn't even tell you. Oh, the stream.
Oh, yeah, I didn't start the stream for like half an hour into the show.
Yeah, it was a stream.
That's a real bad one.
Yep.
But during the interview with Dave, you might have heard what sounded like a commercial on a website playing. That's because I forgot to turn something off, and that's my fault.
Those points adding up quickly for you, Craig.
They have, but I'm still behind you.
By a lot, probably.
By 10.
Okay.
We are now at 80 total points. That math doesn't math.
I was about to say, yeah.
Or no, yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. I've got 5, 10, 15,
35,
20,
45.
35. You've got 45. Yep, that is 80. We still owe ourselves a lunch.
For 60-40, or is that 50-50?
60-40.
Yeah.
60-40 me?
Yeah. Damn. I haven't racked up that many fine points. But to start this one, I definitely was out to like a 40-0 start.
I'm just happy that like we were on a prodigious rate for a while.
Yeah,
we've gotten the show under control.
We've improved.
The whole point of the fine system was to not have to use the fine system.
Yeah.
It's still there, but behavior has been better.
Yes, and we love to see improvement, accountability.
We have a culture of accountability here.
All of that.
Are the do your job signs? Can we take down the do your job signs? I feel like Essig gets to make that call because it's kind of his bit.
Yeah.
But I am proposing that with Ron Rivera having exited the building, the do your job signs also should exit.
What is your favorite Ron quote from his tenure here? He had, and they vary season by season. Ben Standing laid it out in his article.
Yeah, he did.
But he had some quotables, man, and season to season. It was
but most of them weren't good. Like that's the thing. If you there was the one about like a map, about something about experience, and it was like, yeah, you're the guy who took the personnel job having never done it before. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Or like plant your feet where I don't know.
Be where your feet are is a good one. I actually do like that one.
Okay.
I do like that one.
What about position flex?
No.
Buffalo nickel.
I think that's the stupidest. Like, it's just the nickel.
We really thought we were on to something. Landon Collins, a Buffalo nickel, guys.
Well, I mean, I get it. It's not an original thing. They just called it the Buffalo nickel,
yeah.
which like, what that phrasing is from, right?
The Buffalo?
There's an actual coin called a Buffalo nickel, and it's a nickel. It's like a 5-cent piece, but it's bigger.
Oh, wow.
And that's all it is like, some teams just literally call it big nickel.
Yeah.
Because it's playing the nickel, except for it's a safety instead of a corner.
Mm.
So, like, when they would say, oh, Benjamin St. Juste is playing some Buffalo nickel, I'd just be like, no, he's not. He's just playing nickel.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Good old Ron. Gonna miss him.
For what? All due respect.
Real things.
We're not going to be so this year.
Real people.
5-11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Oh, we're going to have to remake a lot of imagers. The real things one gets to stay. Those are iconic quotes. But, like, our pick six and stuff,
definitely
we're going to have to redo. Yeah. Anyway, real things real people said into real microphones. There's one that just jumped off my page. Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell at the Cavs practice in France. Do we get some French, Anthony?
That's Spanish.
That's Spanish. The correct answer is oui.
Mitchell here has been amazing.
That's all you got?
That's all I need to say.
Dr. J.A. Dr. J.A. That's a new nickname.
You got to run it back.
Oh, I missed the beginning.
Bonjour, Monsieur Mitchell here has been amazing.
Monsieur Michel.
What would you rate his French? Because it's Monsieur, Mister.
Yeah,
Okay.
Monsieur.
Monsieur.
Or Monsieur.
Monsieur.
No, Monsieur.
Monsieur.
Yeah.
Okay.
My duo. Hey, Duolingo. Does that count? Do I extend my streak? Raptors coach. Which one should I play? I mean, the Saban. We might have time for both of these. Raptors coach Darko. I should know his name. I'm sorry. Radjakovic went off on the officials after their loss to the Lakers last night. Love a good coach.
Players in our team as well. How's possible is Scotty Barnes, who is all-star caliber player in this league, he goes every single time to the rim with force and trying to get to the rim without flopping and not trying to get foul calls. He gets 2 free throws for the whole game. How's that possible? How are you going to explain that to me? They had to win tonight? If that's the case, just let us know so we don't show up for the game. Just give them a win. But that was not fair tonight. And this is not happening first time for us. Scotty Barnes is going to be all-star. He's going to be the face of this league. And what's happening over here during whole season, I've been holding it back. It's a complete crap.
Okay.
He was fed up yesterday. And I understand that fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
Even like Scotty Barnes dunking on the dude at the end of the game, I thought it was a foul. I was just like, why are you even putting yourself in that position? But they could not buy a whistle in the fourth quarter, man.
Yikes. Last but not least, Nick Saban retiring, I should say, today. A little bit of a throwback. Kirby Smart, Nick Saban for the 2023 SEC Championship game.
But we're right about one thing. I'm too old for this one. Not yet. Y'all did a great job this year. Nobody's done as good a job as you have. This long, this to me, this good. Try to enjoy it, man. Hell of a coach. Appreciate all you did for me.
That's cool. Nick saying, I'm too old for this, but also Kirby saying, hey, appreciate all you did for me. Of course, Kirby Smart, former defensive coordinator at Alabama. If things weren't rolling so good at Georgia, I mean, there's no reason he would leave Georgia for Alabama.
No.
But that is absolutely going to be Alabama's number one target.
Yep, every single time.
They're gonna try. I don't think Kirby would go, but I don't know. Nick left LSU for Bama.
Ooh.
Well, I mean, I guess he went to the Dolphins in between.
Yeah, I just feel as though Kirby, like what he started at Georgia, is just gonna be too hard for him to like walk away from that.
No, why would he? They're the number one. Like, why would you go to a worse team?
And to be honest, had they beaten Georgia, I think they would have won. I mean, Bama, I think they would have went on to win, even extend their win streak. So
yeah, I mean, they're the number one ranked team in the country next year coming into it. They're nasty. He's become kind of what Nick. I mean, like obviously Bama was still a player. Bama beat them this year. Bama was in the playoff. But Kirby's built what Nick built at Alabama.
Yep.
Like a decade later. You know, every year it's a like, how could you be better than Julio Jones? Well, meet this guy. How could you be better than Mark Ingram? Meet Trent Richardson. Then it's the Najee Harris. Then it's the neck. Like, they just That's what Georgia's got right now. All right, we'll have more on all this stuff tomorrow. Wizards basketball now on the Team 980.